Okay, so you are free to go.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Gio, and I will be sharing with you my experience as a Puerto Rican. During 2017, there was a Hurricane Maria. I will start to share my screen that you can see it. Um, so just to double check, Dr. Dos Santos, can you see the full screen on your computer?
Yes,
Sure.
it's good.
Okay. Well, yeah, so as I mentioned, this is my whole name, GIOMARELL Feliciano, and this is lesson from Hurricane Experience as a Puerto Rican. I am in the School of Public Health doing a Master in Public Health Education Wellness Coaching, and I'm also assistant from Dr. Dos Santos Preventive Care Office. Now, with that said, we would like to see how a hurricane has to be in relationship with preventive care or public health. Public health, there are two definitions that I like it. So the first one, it is by the CDC and says the science of protecting and improving the health of people and their communities. This work is achieved by promoting healthy lifestyle, researching disease and injury prevention, and detecting, preventing, and responding to infectious diseases. So we can see here that there is some prevention and some research and also lifestyle. When we talk about lifestyle, is changes that people will live from this time on. While the other definition, which is by the University of Pittsburgh, it is public health defined as the science of protecting the safety and improving the health of communities through education, policy making, and research for disease and injury prevention. So we can apply those definitions to natural disaster, for example, a hurricane, and because even if we cannot control natural disaster, but we can prevent injuries during natural disasters. And also we can have policies of how we will manage certain states or countries or islands that are at high risk of certain natural disaster. In this case, we will focus in a hurricane that was in 2017, Maria. So as a Puerto Rican, I would like to show you what is Puerto Rico. Probably a lot of you know what it is. It is in the Caribbean. So in the south is the Caribbean Ocean or sea, and then in the north side is the Atlantic Ocean. So if you ever visit this area, the Atlantic beaches, usually they are like more for surfing, and there is more wind and all these things. So people like a lot. Now, if you would like to be more in a calm ocean, so then you should go to the south beaches, which are located by the Caribbean Sea. So you can see that one of our neighbor islands is Dominican Republic, and then Dominican Republic has next to it Haiti. Okay, so then we have so many islands here to the east side that are small, including two islands that I will show you here. So those are the 78 municipalities of Puerto Rico. It's just a small island with many municipalities. So these two that you see at the east, it says Culebra, and the other is Vieques. They are also small island that belongs to Puerto Rico. So the other one that also belongs to Puerto Rico that is not in the Milan is this one here in the south called Caja de Muertos. So those three are also part of Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is part of, it's a territory of the United States. It's not a state, but it is a commonwealth. It's so a territory of United States. So I showed you this map because I would like that you be familiar with how was the trajectory of hurricane as we go through the slides. Sorry about that. Now, what is a hurricane? So I would like to play this video here. So by the NOAA, which is the Department of Commerce in United States. So if you would like to know more on how to be ready, it is important to visit this website, ready.gov or hurricanes.gov. In ready.gov also you can find information of, let's say, for example, we are in California, they also give information about wildfires. So then there was a hurricane, but I would like to just go a little bit back before 2017. So in 2016, as you can see this picture here, so that was me visiting Puerto Rico with my wife. That was during my honeymoon. And that was all before the hurricane. So we went there, we went to the beach and we started to ride on the sand. It was so nice and beautiful. So everything calm. So after that, well, we came back to US because I was preparing for the board examination as a medical doctor, and my wife was doing a PhD in chemistry. So we were living in Illinois. So as we were living in Illinois, we visit only Puerto Rico every now and then when we get the chance. And then September 15 to September 16, 2017, I was here in US. And I talked to my parents because we knew that the hurricane will come based on the news, and as we talked, my parents' last words were like, everything will be fine. And after I heard those words from my mom, so just the call get disconnected. And for me was, I was like feeling, started to feel sad because the projection, it seems that it's going to be a very difficult hurricane. So now I've been there in another type of hurricanes in Puerto Rico. I was there in the 1990s for George, which was like category 3 hurricane. So as you all know, categories means depend on the wind speed. So go from category 1 to category 5. So 3 was kind of strong in the 1990s. The George 1 destroyed houses that were made of wood, but actually the next day people were more calm and everything. So just probably around a week or something, I think everything becomes more normal. That was in the 1990s. So, but in the 2017, this is start to be different because for Hurricane Maria is the second one that they receive. What does that mean? So they have the Hurricane Irma, was just like probably a week before, but that one didn't hit the whole island, only went through the east. So they were also helping in the east area, the other islands that were hit by the Irma hurricane. So, but now we have people from other islands in Puerto Rico receiving assistance, medical assistance in hospitals, and Hurricane Maria come. And then we have the people from Puerto Rico also needs to use the hospital. So that was like overwhelming hospital situation with too much people from the main from Puerto Rico, and also the other people from islands that we had there that we received to help because they received the Hurricane Irma before the Hurricane Maria. So I hope that this makes sense. So basically in less than a month they have like 2 hurricanes, but the strongest one was Maria, and the one that really crossed through the whole island was Maria. For example, we'll focus in that. Was preventive care. So one of the deficits that we saw is what can we do if another places, like let's say the other islands, they are developing places, they don't have enough resources, and even if they have it, so they were devastated by hurricanes. So now we are helping them, and then we also get hit. So how can we stay helping others but sometimes stay safe? So this is something that we as public health need to think from this time on, because sometimes we don't know what will happen and how we can help others. So going back here to September 15 to 16, so after I talked to my parents, so well, that was a blackout because they turn off the power that coming just to prevent fires as the hurricane goes through the winds. Okay, so people who didn't have generators, so they will not have power for days and even probably for months. So but we weren't expecting for months, because if we go back history in the 1990s, so the power was restored kind of fast, but the Hurricane Maria was a different story than the one that we had in the 1990s. So September 15, 16, as I mentioned, I talked to my parents. That was the last time on that time. So then I was started to feel like agony, pain, and tears. So, well, why I was feeling so deep sadness? Because as I see the news and I check, I can see, because they were tracking through satellite, so what the hurricane was doing. So I cannot see literally pictures and things like that, because the satellite doesn't go that deep to see very close to it. But we can understand how the winds are maximum 174 to 175 miles per hour, and that what this is the winds. But the hurricane needs to move, correct? So as move, the speed of moving and crossing through the island was like a walking speed. So imagine that you start to walk through a town and you have 174 miles per hour. So, which was something also unique from Maria, because other hurricanes, they have high winds but they move fast, so you don't receive that much damage. But this one was almost sitting in the middle of the island, just giving winds and wind and winds, and take very long days. So, and as I saw that in Illinois, when I was watching online, I was sad. My wife arrived home and I was just like in a deep distress. So, and this is something that is very important, because sometimes um, we focus in what was happening there, but at the same time, the Puerto Ricans that were here in the mainland, I check on Facebook and a lot of people were writing, do you know something about my family? Do you know something about these people? Do you know something? We don't have communication for days. And I was one of those. So I'm usually not a Facebook person, but those days I became a Facebook person. So to see if I can find some information just about the status of my family, it was so hard. So, um, but yeah, so what I want to say here, sometimes we need to focus also in mental health. So for the people who are going through having directly, so people who have directly impact. Oh, just a second, I can see. Oh yeah, sorry, that we have a connection here. But yeah, so mental health. So it is important to for the people who are directly impacted, that they're in the land that has the hurricane, they need help with that, and people who are far from the main from the place that the hurricane is happening also will need some assistance or help to have mental health well, better outcome. Okay, so now that was the hurricane those days, and I wanted to show you this tractor here. If you see this line, so it goes, this is the small island of Puerto Rico, so you see just cross through the center. Okay, so just cover the whole island. The hurricane was bigger than the island, so now you can see how strong it was, that it will destroy everything. And our neighbor islands, like for example, Dominican Republic, gets some winds too. But after the hurricane touched the ocean, start to get, it could be that some of them get stronger, some of them get weak, depending on the temperature and all these things. But at least didn't affect that much Dominican Republic. Thanks God. And well, with that said, let's see what happened. So I spent 6 days at home in Illinois, and with no communication, just only checking what was happening in the news, and I didn't know. Now, after 6 days, I received a call. In that time I was training for a 5K race. So, and this is very important. So because if I was depressed, I will not go out. But when I was in distress or in deep sadness, so at least I was functional. So at least I was enjoying a little bit, not as much, but I was enjoying what I used to do, which is running. In the time I was training. So, which is a good sign that I still have some hope. Now, if I stop even to doing what I really like it, or I was really doing to train for in that time, so then it's going to be a very bad picture of myself. So, but in that time, so I still doing the training, even if I was sad and deep, but I trust in God that they will be fine, even if I didn't have any answers. So after those 6 days, I received a call from my auntie, and she as soon as I answer, I said hello, and she said those words, "Hello, Canito, this is Titi. We are okay. Your parents are okay." So, and then they call me Canito. So this is the nickname. As a family, they call me like this. So, and then she said, well, I'm going back to, she crossed from the west to the east because she worked for the government. So she has to go, and she said, this is very bad to travel. I'm trying to reach my, well, to the place that she worked, but she was having hard time because the streets were blocked by street. There was no power. There are some floods. So she was trying to do her best, and she tried to arrive to her place to help because she worked for the government. But yeah, so that was after 6 days. At least I know, and I feel more calm because I know that they are okay, they are alive. So regardless of what happened around them in the environment, so they are alive. This is what really matters in this time, is when someone is alive. So after 8 days, my sister is calling me. So you can see my auntie called me 6 days. So because she traveled from the west to the east. As you go to the east, because it's where more the government offices are, so they start to work faster to try to communicate. And also she can use phone calls from government telephone, so which is something that was good. Now, but I didn't have communication directly with my sister or parents. So after I communicate with them, my sister called me and she told me, I asked for a phone. Sorry, I missed the past tense here on the ask. So, but yeah, I asked for a phone call to call you. So, and she said, we are fine. I'm buying bread, and that is a long line. I don't have much time. And then I found out that they don't accept electronic payment because there was no power. So that means that people who didn't have cash, so they cannot buy. So I remember that then when I visited my parents in December of that year, my parents told me that at least they have some cash, and they have to borrow some cash to our neighbors because they have all the money in the bank. So, but the bank doesn't have power. All the transaction, everything is it shows we cannot do it. So they cannot put money out because they don't know who are giving money to. So that was a whole mess. People who didn't have cash, they have hard time buying stuff. But at least communities start to help, and those who have cash will start to borrow money to others. So something that I learned from my dad is that it is always important to have at least some cash on your pocket. So we get used too much credit cards, debit cards, everything is electronic. But what about if there is something like this? So usually here in US, we don't carry that much cash, but for those who are in other places, they tend to have more cash just because of that. I hope that, well, people learn from that. You don't have to have a lot, but at least $40, $100. So maybe, to sustain some days if you need to buy something that is in stock. So it's something to keep in mind. And but yeah, so that was after 8 days. I talked to my sister, and then you see here two pictures running because I was still running when this time I was running, me and my wife. So both of us, we were training. Now, the same day, but in the afternoon, my dad also, because in the west area they didn't have communication, he decided I have to talk to my son. He started to travel, and he went almost half of the island. He crossed almost half the island through the north side toward the east, until he saw on his phone there is a line to call. And there was a lot of people on the highway. People stopped in the highway just to call. And I heard when I saw my phone, I said, Papi is calling, meaning my dad is calling. And I was so happy, and I answered immediately. And as I called, so I talked to them, and then they told me, well, I was getting ready to go home after finishing the running. And then they said, let's see the FaceTime work. So we tried the FaceTime, and this is when I see them. So I was super happy to see them. My mom was very happy too to see me. So, and that was a very emotional moment and a very relief moment. So I feel like I mean, I had peace, but I was just with this distress was difficult. But in that moment, I feel like, wow, just like I know that my parents are fine. I see them, and that was very, very emotional moment. Thanks God. So now, during those days, what happened during those days that I was here on uncertainty, and my family and my neighbors there and any person there was going through the hurricane. So that was a picture captured that we had on my home. as we can see, that was on Wednesday, 9/20/17. So you can see here, it's a little bit blurry because, well, those are outdoor cameras. But you can see how the trees are already all down, and everything is just going down. So now, if you ever been to the Caribbean, you can see that there is a lot of nature almost everywhere. So except if you go to the cities, that is just like any common city. But if you go more to the inland or into the rural area, so you will see that there are a lot of trees everywhere. It's green and everything. Now imagine that you as Puerto Rican are there for years and everything is green, and suddenly you wake up and you see all these trees down. That was one of my nephew and my nieces. They were in shock when they came out from their house. And my sister, that is nothing. Everything is brown, everything is burned, there are no trees. So that was an environmental distress, because you get used to see too much nature, and then suddenly there are no trees. And I think that they talk more about how they were affected by not seeing the beauty of the nature than even the power that they didn't have. Make sense? So it is very interesting, because sometimes we focus too much in technology, but at least in my family, my sister and my nephew and nieces, they really were impacted by not seeing the many trees standing up. So here are some example of some houses, what happened to them. So you can see here, well, it looks destroyed. So here we can see that too. Then there was also another place, so we can see there. So now what can we do? So those what happened in those days. So what else happened in those days? So there was no water. So, and if you have a water reservation, it is good, but that will not last long, because if you see, I took 8 days without talking to my parents. So that meaning that those 8 days, the hurricane didn't last 8 days, last probably around 4 to 5 days. Okay. But then after that, so everything is destroyed. So it's flooded, there is no power. And because there is no power, so you can use a lot of water places to pump the water. And if you have a reservation, will not last long, as I mentioned. Now, another experience that happened, my parents at least has a concrete house, which it should be more, it's better for this kind of weather. However, for some reason, something in the roof, a pipe just break, and then water start to come in. So my house started to get flooded inside, and they cannot go outside because the winds are there. So they were just trying to flush the water through the toilet because the house was getting flooded. So my uncle, for example, he has to start to put the bed and furniture against they have some protection for the windows, but the wind was so strong that cannot handle it. They has to do then put furniture inside of the room to protect the windows while the hurricane went through. So now you can see that during those days there was a lot of distress, because you're trying to protect, you want to have a shelter, and your shelter is going away, exceed the possibility. Those who has a wood house, so yes, definitively will go away faster than those who have concrete house. But having a concrete house doesn't guarantee you that will sustain it, because as I saw, there were some concrete house that were not, for any other reason, they also lose the house. So now, with that said, another thing that happened was the communicable diseases, for example, leptospirosis, so which is caused by bacteria through the urine of animals. And if people start to get leptospirosis, why? Because they didn't have water, and then they try to get water, even if coming from the faucet. So that was probably the pipe was broken in the other place, and you think that the water is clean, but it's not clean because a creature, an animal, just pee in another place. So get inside the water, you drink the water, and then you get the leptospirosis. So they have an endemic of leptospirosis on those days, and they have to work with it. So as public health or preventive care, so this is something that we need to educate people. So of how to know which water to drink, or try to filter water or reheat water or do something to protect, because it is expected that will happen. So I didn't know that. I just learned it after the hurricane, and I'm almost sure that a lot of people didn't know that. But as public health and knowing that the location exceeds the possibility that we'll have other storms, so it is important to prevent. We cannot prevent the storm, but we can prevent outcomes, negative outcomes. So, and I mentioned before, education is fundamental, and also prepare people. So to have to be resilient. So to have a strong mindset that even if there are difficulties, so things can get better. At least I would say that the majority of Puerto Ricans were very optimistic that they will come out from it. And I remember that, thanks God, so a lot of institutions helped to the island, so which was good. Now it is important also that we know our population. So we know even in the same island, it is important to know, because as we all know, we have all different levels of education. We have different places where we live. Some people live in concrete houses that are better built, or people have concrete houses that were built long time ago and they didn't have the correct equipment to build the house correctly. Or it is important to know the geographic areas, as I was describing, and you know your strength and weakness. So why this is important? Because if you are strong in something, so you keep it, but if you are weak in something, so you can become strong. And this is when we recognize that we need help when situations come. So be prepared. Like any other recommendation, use generators if you like to keep the power, which is very important, because one of the things that happen is for diabetic patients that they are insulin dependent. So some of them didn't have the insulin. Well, they didn't have, they have the insulin, they had the insulin, but they didn't have the generator for the refrigerator, and then the insulin cannot last long because need to be cold, correct? Yeah. So, and then unfortunately, if you don't have the insulin if you need it, so then you can get all the consequences of diabetes. Okay, so if you are diabetic type 1, so it's worse than if you have diabetic type 2. So the difference is that diabetes type 1, you really need the insulin, is 100% dependent. Diabetes type 2, you don't need it unless you are in so much your diabetes is not well controlled, medications and lifestyle, so then they give you insulin when it just in the most in the last stages of diabetes. So that was one of the things that happened there. People with dialysis, meaning you need to have dialysis to purify your blood, and it's not happening because there is no power. So another challenge that also they had that we probably need to be prepared. I think they're already working with. Do you remember the map that I showed you? So the map that we have, Vieques and Culebra, that they are municipalities, part of Puerto Rico. So what is happening is that they don't have main hospitals, that they need to take a helicopter to the mainland in Puerto Rico to get treatment for dialysis. So which can also be difficult. So during a hurricane, before or during or after. So also another recommendation to be prepared is water reservation. Water reservation is when we have this backup of water, because if we don't have enough water, so then people start to get dehydrated, and we know all the consequences. So there are more things that we can do as prevent worse outcomes, but I just wanted to highlight some of them. So with that said, I would like to thank you for all your attention. And if you have any questions, you can ask, and God bless. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't show
Questions
my,
from the audience?
sure. Sorry, what I say?
No, I am asking if the audience has any questions, and we have Abel. You want to say something, Abel?
Yeah, that was good. My question for Gio is, what does he think would be the greatest challenge from the public health stand in a situation like that?
So yeah,
I guess you mentioned water seems to be one of the biggest problems when.
I would say, yeah, it will water, because water is so we really only need water, so we need water to cook, we need water to be hydrated, so it is part our basic needs, also shelter. However, on shelter, at least the government before the hurricane, they know which houses will not handle the hurricane. They ask people to be on shelters. Make sense? So that was good. And I would say that the majority of people has shelter, even if they lose their houses, but they have shelter. So I will not say that that probably the main problem of public health, but as a basic needs to survive, it is water, as I mentioned, because we need to drink water and cook, and also hygiene. So if people are cluttered in one side and they are not taking a shower and they're not cleaning, then even if you have the shelter but you're not cleaning yourself, so then infectious diseases will come because there is no hygiene. So, and it is important to have a hygiene, and usually water is needed for a good hygiene. Did I answer your question?
Thank you, Gio.
No, you're welcome. Okay, any other question?
I heard that even today in Puerto Rico, they still have problems with related to that hurricane. Is that so? I mean,
So yeah,
water or the plant or the power in some areas are still not working well.
yeah, so this is a good question. Yeah, so so there are some areas definitively that the power is not working well. So what happened with the power in Puerto Rico is they used to have like a very old system. For any other reason, was not updated by previous governments, the system. And then when the hurricane hit, so well, US says, I will send you equipment to restore the power, but because the power that we had is so old and doesn't go with the US guidelines, so they cannot send, they have to do everything new. And because they have to do everything new, and people, if they will make everything new, it will take years, because building the whole island with new system, it will take long. So what happened is that then they start to restore some areas, but then put in and use the old system, try to fix as much as possible, but it's so weak. Was bad before, but now it's worse. So now any small wind that come or anything that happen, people is in blackout. So, and now they sold part of the well, the company that distribute that. So was first a governmental institution, now is half private and half governmental. So now they are working with that. So the private and the governmental, but now they have some issues of power. So who will control each part, because they're just like water and oil. So now we have that situation, and it could be better, but I think that people needs to really look what is the need. It is my own interest as a government, is in my own interest as a private company. So it is not it is the people. So, and I think that things can get better once those two institutions that are managing the power right now agree to say, okay, we're here to help the Puerto Ricans, so they need the power. So let's just agree and do it. So, but they are having some rough time there because of that. For instance, some areas are more affected. Now, the areas that are not affected, just some people decided to do their houses solar and things like that. So, which I think is better to be more self-sufficient, and solar system, I'm pro solar system. But yeah, so did I answer your question, Dr. Dos Santos?
Yeah, thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Hi, Gio, it's Linda. How are you?
Very good, Priscilla. How are you, Linda?
I'm good. So the people who live in the country past the rainforest, right?
Yes, so the people who lives in Puerto Rico, we have rainforest. It's very often we get used to. I mean, rainforest is if it's
Well, I
getting
call
to
that the country. I call
Sorry?
it the country. I know Puerto Rico pretty well. So when the people live beyond the rainforest, right? That's country.
Sorry,
Outside of town, Puerto Rico, like Bayamón.
yeah, Bayamón is one of the town from Puerto Rico. Yes.
Right, but outside of that, those people who live past the rainforest, the waterfalls, how are they affected by this power? Because they are the low socioeconomic.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much for this. This is, yeah, I thank you for asking the question, because when Dr. Dos Santos asked me, I wanted to connect it with what is happening, the coast versus the center of the island. So yeah, so people who live more into the center of the island, they had, I mean, took like months to start to get communication with them. They start to get better. So why? Because the center of the island, it has a lot of mountains, streets are smaller, and was very difficult. Now we have more population at the coast areas, in all the towns on the coast area, but we still have some population into the center of the island. And unfortunately, yes, they had more hard time to get out from there. And yes, it was more difficult for them. It's still been they still have some challenges because of probably socioeconomic status and all that things. But lately, based on my parents told me that people start to move more to the coast. So lately people is trying to get houses. They even actually have some places hard to find houses and land to buy, because people is trying to get more to the coast. So all the development and all the research come faster to the coast, because you're close to the beach, and then all the equipment come and everything. The center is difficult. It's more challenging. So, but it's beautiful. So if you've been there in Puerto Rico, the center is beautiful. Just like, wow, this is, but in times like this, so it's difficult. Yeah. Did I answer your question, Linda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think that was all. I have some references here. Let me show you before we close the yeah. So that was on the references for the definition of the public health that I use, and that was all.
Thank you very much. We will finish the session now, and I will stop recording.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.